We work with the largest payment companies across B2B payments, virtual card providers. Yeah. So like what people don't understand is that with payments, that payment depends on money. So essentially right now, like the way that the international payment market is set up is that everything goes through SWIFT. I can only do as many transactions to Colombia as the money I have in Colombia. So I'm capped. Right?
Yes.
So it's a game of liquidity. I remember you telling me the story about how you used to send money before. There was no bank where you were staying.
There was no bank.
Right?
Now,
100%.
talking about fuel and liquidity, can you break down how liquidity actually works on Mansa's backend? Where are the bottlenecks and how do you solve them in real time?
Yeah.
Welcome to Crypto G's. Today we're back in the Leo da Vinci Media Studio and we have a very special guest, Mr. Mo. How are you today?
Very good. How are you? Thank you
good.
for having me.
So, Guinea, yeah?
Yeah.
Dutch,
Yes.
Chinese.
Correct.
How many
Correct.
languages you speak?
5.
5.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chinese, Dutch, English,
French.
French.
And an
Serbia.
African language my parents speak called Mandingo.
amazing.
It's spoken in primarily in Western Africa. It's spoken in Mali, in Guinea, Senegal, Ivory Coast, and Gambia. Spoken around
amazing.
like the whole like Western African
How
empire.
old are you, Mo?
28.
That's so young.
Yeah, but like people always think I'm 16.
Yeah, you look very young.
People think I'm very young. I know, but yeah, I just have really good skin. You know, I moisturize like twice a day. You know, like that's
Yes.
the secret.
That's the secret. But only in crypto, 1 year is 10 years, but for
That's
you
it.
the other way around, just getting younger.
It's like dog years. Trust me. 1 week feels like a month.
Yes,
You
it's
know?
true. Now, let's get into crypto. Obviously, you mentioned before you've been in crypto since 2018.
Yeah.
You took an internship with Trade.io.
Trade.io. Yeah, with JP.
And then, yeah, that was interesting story. You went, you reach out, you go there, you start to work. So you basically survived now 3 bear markets.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy to be honest.
So crypto, now is back in the spotlight. Trump got elected. People start to talk about it. And now we have seen billion flowing in. BlackRock start to put money on it. Everybody started to put in it. But price went up, went down. But from your let's talk about Mansa. What's really fueling this momentum beyond the hype of these elections and, adoption?
Yeah, and I think like it's like that's a great question. But I think it's also very important to realize that crypto, especially blockchain, is not just prices. It's not just tokens. Like there's actually like real technology like behind it that actually like improves lives. Like for example, like you're from Latin America, right?
Colombia,
right? In Colombia, it's the same thing like as in Africa, where you have currencies that are devaluing against the dollar, right? Sending money in and out is extremely expensive. Africa costs like 10%. Latin America is like 5%, and essentially Southeast Asia can be as high as essentially like 6%. It's extremely difficult like to do business with like across the world because there's a shortage of dollars, right?
Yes.
Like on the ground. So what essentially crypto and stablecoins do, they like enable you to get dollar exposure.
Yes.
Right? They enable you to trade and transact with the like entire world. And when there is money movement, that's when you can actually have economic like prosperity, right? And that's essentially upon which like Mansa is built, is on global payments, is on stablecoins, essentially solving the biggest pain points that we have in emerging markets, which is the efficient flow of money in and out, right? So essentially what Mansa does is we work with the largest payment companies across B2B payments to remittance companies, virtual card providers, OTC players, in Africa, Asia, and in Latin America.
Okay.
And we give them the ability to settle their transactions globally 24/7 instantly without
amazing.
having to keep, their own source of funds everywhere, like around the world, like when they want to settle transactions. We've been live since August. And we've done like 100 million in like payments since like August. But like we actually went down for 2 months, so it's actually 100 million in 7 months. And like we're scaling like incredibly like quickly, right? So this doesn't matter for me. I don't care about the price of Bitcoin.
Okay.
Bitcoin could go to zero, right? Because like So essentially, like what I'm trying to say is that there are actually real world solutions that are being built that is actually beyond the hype. That will be here for the next 5 bear markets. That will be here when there's a bull market, right? Because we are building for the long term. And I believe that the solutions that are being built, especially in stablecoins, are actually having real life effect and real life impact in emerging markets where they need it the most.
That's insane. Actually, one of the reasons why I jump in crypto is because I start to send crypto to my mother in Colombia.
Amazing.
Because I was paying up to 20% with Western Union or MoneyGram. I can't remember. That was 2016. And then I start to research more. So I'm a computer engineer, and then research, and then I went and saw a video about M-Pesa.
Yeah.
So that M-Pesa is what got me like fuel about helping to people, in Colombia. Because I remember when I was little, I used to visit my grandma in a remote area of the Andes, and they were like 3,000 people in that town, and they didn't have banks. So I remember we used to have to go from one city to another city like 3 hours by car just to get bank or deposit. Or they used to use like memos or like they used to call it like telegrams or something like that. It was so weird. I can't remember now. But that was one of my reasons. And then I decided, but very interesting point of view, that what you're building with Mansa, because Bitcoin's here, it was the first one, but now stable coins, everything getting more popular. And now you launched Mansa during a bear market.
Wow.
And now, as you say, it's processing tens of millions on chain. What the core pain point you saw in cross-border payments that no one else was solving properly? Because there's so many.
Yeah. So like what people don't understand is that with payments, that payment depends on money. So essentially right now, like the way that the international payment market is set up is that everything goes through SWIFT. SWIFT T+1, T+2, T+3, because it goes through a long series of like intermediaries. But the way that like all these payment companies like Western Union, TransferWise, Revolut, the way they send your transactions instantly is because, let's say, for example, I'm doing a transaction between Dubai and Colombia. If I'm Western Union, I already have Colombian pesos sitting with a banking partner in Colombia. So whenever you want to send money to your mom, your dirhams stay here, and then the pesos is taken from what I have in like Colombia. So theoretically, I can only do as many transactions to Colombia as the money I have in Colombia. So I'm capped, right? So it's a game of liquidity. So the more balance sheet I have, the more size I have, the more global transactions and the more global routes I can do. And that's the same thing if you're an OTC company. For example, if I have 1 million dirhams like that I want to change to USDT, if you only have 500,000 like USDT, we can trade because you don't have liquidity. If I'm a virtual card provider, you see all these stablecoin cards that have MasterCard and Visa card. They need to keep money with MasterCard and Visa card. So whenever you swipe, Visa and MasterCard take from the money. Right? So across all the different stacks of payments, you need capital to be able to scale, especially if you want to have a essentially wide user base. And that right now comes from a company's own balance sheet. So there's like $4 trillion that's locked in all these accounts around the world, right?
Wow.
So what Mansa does is we work with all these payment companies that I've just mentioned, and we give them the necessary liquidity in stablecoins to settle their transactions instantly 24/7 without having to keep their own balance sheet. So most of the payment companies that we've worked with have essentially increased their volume by 30% because they can now do more transactions and much quicker, and have increased their revenue by 10% because previously they were leaving money on the table because they just couldn't do these larger transactions efficiently as well.
Okay. So now obviously everything we come both from an emerging market. What do you believe emerging markets, especially in Africa and Latin America, are the real testing grounds for scalable Web3 infrastructure?
I think that, and I've always said this, that Web3 crypto needs emerging markets and not the like other way around. Because if you think about it, here in the UAE or in the West, if I want to send you money, I'll just use my Mashrek and you get it instantly. There's instant rails, and if I want to send money globally, I can, and receive money, I can, right? I remember you telling me the story about how you used to send money before, like with your grandma. There was no bank where you were staying. There was no bank, right? And there, I think the figure is 10. I think there is 10 banks for every 10,000 people in some places in Africa. So there's no way. So the financial infrastructure, Web2 infrastructure is completely like limited. So if I don't have a bank, you can send me money. But the great thing is about like the places where we're from is that everybody's very tech savvy. It's a very tech first place, right? Everybody has a phone. And because everybody has a phone, people have been using digital money, right? So there's like Nubank in like Brazil, for example, there's M-Pesa. In Southeast Asia, there's Grab, right? In Philippines, in Philippines and Indonesia, they only use Grab. So people are already used to sending money back and forth with their phone and using their phone essentially like as a wallet. So I feel like this has created the perfect environment, especially together with all the issues, right? Like high currency, like devaluation, the high cost of sending money back and forth, so on and so forth, have created the perfect environment where Web3 infrastructure can actually make a considerable impact and can actually help improve the lives of businesses and people, because we don't really need it in America. We don't need it in Europe, but we do need it in Latin America. We do need it in Africa, and we do need it in Southeast Asia. And that's where I believe and how we can actually get, quote unquote, the next billion people on chain, because that's where we are going to get the next billion people.
Okay. Wow. I like to talk about this topic because I recently was in Buenos Aires 6 weeks ago. And then I went there to the streets. And people were trying to sell me or like the local currency, pesos, for dollars on the street. Remember Argentina a couple of years ago, they stopped the payments of dollars. Nobody could use, and then reopen it. But there's still like a parallel market. So all those parallel markets, which I find fascinating also in Venezuela, you know, they had the real Bolivar, is the Bolivar, right? Bolivar and the fake Bolivar, or like the street Bolivar, which will make it quite interesting. So I'm very bullish into the third world countries, developing countries. I think so that's the fuel of the whole economy for the next 20 years. Now,
100%.
Talking about fuel and liquidity, can you break down how liquidity actually works on Mansa's backend? Where are the bottlenecks and how do you solve them in real time?
Yeah. So the bottlenecks is so like the biggest bottleneck is essentially from the perspective of a payment company, whether you're a Web3 payment company or you're like a Web2 payment company. Do I have enough cash sitting across all these different accounts across the whole world to settle my transaction instantly when my customers want me to like send that money? So essentially what we're doing is that we have essentially developed an API where we've turned the liquidity into an API. We just connect in your backend. Whenever you get transactions, we can finance those transactions for you in real time. And from the perspective of a traditional like payment company, like you don't even need to know it's stablecoins. Right, like you need a transaction like to be settled in China, in Venezuela, in Nigeria, or even vice versa from like the global West to the global South. We can provide that liquidity and we can provide that infrastructure that like enables you to settle these transactions seamlessly 24/7.
And now we talk about stablecoins and we're talking about the giant. But you raised from giants like Tether and polymorphic capital. What do VCs misunderstand the most about payments in the global South?
First of all, like I want to say that, look, I've been building Mansa for the past 2 years, and rightly, like as you noted, during the bear market, and like before Stripe brought Bridge, nobody cared about stablecoins. Nobody cared about stablecoins. Nobody cared about stablecoins, and people even care less so, to be honest, about like emerging markets, right? Like that's the sad reality.
It is,
that I have to tell you, brother. Like especially like among these VCs who like a lot of times chase these unrealistic 1000x returns, right? Like that are just vaporware and like have actually like no real life value, right? So it was very, at first, right, it was quite difficult trying to and on top of that, right, if you're not from like emerging markets, if you weren't from like Colombia, you wouldn't understand what I'm trying to solve, or like you wouldn't understand the like pain points, right? So like you need to be from the market, or you need to have seen it in order to understand the potential like and scale. So I guess like that was the most difficult thing to do at first, explaining and like explaining the exponential scale of this, right? That it's not just an African problem, it's a global like emerging market problem that's in the trillions of dollars. And then secondly as well is that a lot of people think that tokens are the only way to make money in crypto, like, which is not the case. I think that, you know, like we've seen like recently all the like M&As that's happening. Coinbase bought Deribit for what, like $2.9 billion, right? Stripe bought Bridge at $1.1 billion, right? And that was a 90x multiple on their revenue. And you have what, like, I think yesterday you have Anchorage Digital that just bought Mountain Protocol, right? So there's a raft of like M&As that are happening, especially right now when there's regulatory clarity, right? Where there's all these bigger players who have so much cash, or all these big payment companies that need a stablecoin strategy are gonna have to start buying companies, right? So like I think that's the second like misconception that was essentially like hard to explain. But I think like apart from that is that people think that once payment go on chain that it will solve everything, but that's not the way it works. In order for payments to essentially really go on chain, we must create that infrastructure that has a seamless fiat to stablecoin on and off ramp. Because it doesn't matter if I have, let's say, $10,000. If I can't get 10,000 like USDT, I can't settle my transaction.
Yeah.
Right. So like we must create like that bridge, like where we can seamlessly go from stablecoin to fiat, and or vice versa, and then settle the transaction and then actually have a real like business use case, right? So like a lot of these things where, and because payments is also quite a like a niche market, so a lot of these things like made it a little bit more like difficult. But you know, alhamdulillah, I like managed to partner with, you know, with Tether, which is crazy to me, right? If you told me that like a year ago, I would tell you that like that you're lying. But they've been amazing partners. I work very closely together with the Tether country heads in emerging markets globally, and we are both aligned that payments in emerging markets must become more seamless. And once you make payments more seamless, you can really have real economic growth and real economic activity.
What is fascinating as well is how a stable token project like Tether became the most profitable company last year in the whole Web3. It's amazing.
It's crazy.
So that's where we're heading. And I hope everybody's taking note, because what you said in the last 4 minutes is like a master class in payment solution and stable coins. I'm talking about master class. You obviously are a citizen of the world. You travel the world. You live in Guinea, Belgium as well.
Yeah.
China. Now you're living here. What moment in your life do you think shaped you the most into this entrepreneur's mindset that you have today?
That's an interesting question. But I think, you know, I don't think it was particularly just like one moment. I think like I have a mom who's very, very entrepreneurial, who's essentially so ambitious, right? So ever since like I was a kid, right? Like I would see my mom close like all these really big deals, right? Start all these different ventures, right? So I have to say, right, and that's where I feel like I got a lot of my inspiration from, you know. So I feel like those were the key moments, right? Like seeing her do like all these things, right? And then also essentially being around people like JP, for example, right? Who like I've seen essentially absolutely crush it, right? Like over the like past few years, right? And like having other great mentors, for example, like Arthur Hayes, right? Like who's a very good friend of mine as well, right? So I think like all these like different moments of like being around all these like different people who I could just like learn from, right? And then also being around the world where you learn so much about like all these different cultures, and because you've traveled so much, you have such a great like such an open mindset, and you see how much smaller the world actually is and what is actually possible.
That's amazing. So it's more than geographically, it's about your inner circle, who you surround with. And so just mention something that's quite interesting, because very similar, my mom also was an entrepreneur, so I think I got it from her. But you mentioned you reach out also on LinkedIn, JP, and then you took the internship. I actually reached out on Facebook, my mentor on crypto, Thomas. Yeah, he's been a Bitcoin max since 2013. Wow. And yeah, we became friends, and now I help him to build a couple of projects. So I think so, yeah, being surrounded by great minds, it helps a lot. And now, okay, that's in the positive side. Now let's talk about something that probably hasn't been or was a learning curve. Tell me about a night, maybe during Mansa, when you were building, that you thought about quitting. Like you said, I want to quit, or what kept you going and say, no, I'm not going to quit. I have to finish this what I start. You have a moment in during this year that you say, you know what, this is too much.
Yeah, there were multiple moments, to be completely honest, right?
Very nice.
There were multiple moments where just like, I am just going to stop. But I think, one of the most striking moment, I believe, that I had was when, I think it was last year when I was still raising, we were negotiating a term sheet, and the term sheet and the deal just fell through because we couldn't agree on the terms, right? I was 1 year into funding everything, into starting a company. We hadn't raised, so obviously like my partner and I, my co-founder at the time, right? And we just funded everything, right? And we're just running out of money, right? And I remember just when this deal fell through, I remember calling my mentor and telling him, I don't think I can do this anymore. I want to quit, right? Nothing is happening, right? No one is understanding what we're trying to do. It's so difficult to raise. I'm sick of talking to all these investors. I'm sick of flying out across the whole world. I have spent all my money, right?
Yes.
On this, right? And I told him I want to quit. And then he told me, and I'll never forget this, right? I'll never forget this, right? He told me, sure, if you want to quit, you should quit, but I want you to at least hear me out. And then he told me about his whole life, right? All the struggles that he went through and all the triumphs that he went to. And he told me that. And then at the end, he told me that if you want to quit, that's fine. But take some time to think about what are the lessons that you can take from this, right? And then after hearing him, right, who's a legend to me, right, talking about all the struggles that he went through and how he came out of the other side, I remember telling him on the call, I can't quit. I'm not a quitter. I've never been a quitter in my life, and I told him we're gonna get this done, and I promise you we're gonna, I don't know how, but I promise you we're gonna get this done. And it's crazy because we got it done. We got it done even much bigger than I could have ever dreamed of, right? I could have never guessed, right, that we would reach $100 million in 7 months, right? That we'd work with large companies all over the world, or that we'd get an investment from Tether. It was just all about, it's a lot about self-belief and believing that you can do it. But I guess when your back is against the wall, when you have no other option, it really shows who you are as a man. It's and who you are as a person. Something that I normally do more, I read books or biographies. So I read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. By Nike, he struggled a lot, and then the Japanese screw him over. So there's a lot of stuff that happened. And now reading Bitcoin Billionaires, the story of the Winglebos twins. Amazing.
They got $65 million from Mark Zuckerberg, the deal of Facebook, and they were trying to invest money in Silicon Valley in startups. And because they knew they were attached to Mark, people started to close the door. So even they have influence, power, and money, they struggle. So that how they ended up finding Bitcoin. They went to an event in Ibiza, and then it was Charlie Shrimp that told them about Bitcoin, and they actually struggled trying to find more Bitcoin to buy.
Wow.
So I like to read this book where people struggle. You say, hey, my problem is quite big, but you read billionaires that have a struggle, that where you say, my problem is not that big, let's carry on. Exactly. Now, people always see, for example, I talk about all these people always see the shiny part, right? People see, for example, that you've been in the Forbes list, that you got the 10 million funding from Tether. But what part of your story do you think nobody sees? What they should know? There's a part of the story that nobody have seen it.
Yeah, I mean, it does look very, what they say, right? All that glitters is not gold.
Yeah.
Right. It does look, and I'm not gonna, sit here and tell you sad tales and not tell you that I live a very good life, right? Okay. I do live a very good life, right? And things are good, but sometimes things are like also like really bad, right?
Yes,
It's like, and like people don't understand that, especially like once you take venture money from like very large investors, there is that expectation that like things actually realize, right? Like you actually have to do what you said like you were gonna do, right? And there is immense pressure. There is immense like imposter syndrome, right? Like
Yes.
sometimes like I like even question if you know like I can like really do this, right? Or like sometimes I like even question if you know we have the ability to achieve all the goals that like we want to like achieve, right? There are a lot of sleepless nights, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of like doubts, right? And stuff goes wrong all the time, right? There's things that go wrong in tech, right? Like, and there's a lot of like external factors that you just can't control, right? So it's like I have an amazing co-founder, right? And like I am so grateful like for her, right? But it gets incredibly lonely as well.
It's lonely, yes.
It gets incredibly lonely, right? Because you're like, is like first of all, like I don't like even want to talk about it. Second of all, if I talk about it, will somebody like even truly like understand me, right? Yeah. Or like would be like, oh, boo-hoo, like, you know what I mean? So yes. But to be honest, these moments are like what like makes it special. Yes. You know, like I was actually talking to a friend the other day, and I told him, life would be so boring if we were happy all the time. Right? I would be so bored.
It is, yeah, it's true.
So I feel like it's these little moments, right? It's the ups and downs that really make it like worth it.
What happening? I have seen that in crypto the last 4 or 5 years, especially with content creators. They make so much money so fast, and then everything becomes so normal for them. Yeah. You know, traveling, cars, watches, houses. So I have seen the last year, especially with content creators in crypto, they start to change their habits, mindset. It's no more about having, it's about living and helping others, which is, I think that's what it makes it more important. I'm talking about content creators and stuff. There is a lot of noise always in Web3, right? So there is meme coins, speculation, copy-paste project, you name it. Yeah. But what does real innovation look like you in this space?
I think real innovation is something that actually solves a real problem.
Okay.
That is real innovation, right? Like real innovation is, does this improve the efficiency and the speed, the cost, the reliability? Because I feel like as well, not everything needs blockchain the same way not everything needs AI.
Yes.
Right. Sure. So it like, does it actually help people? Does it actually make an impact? I think that's the best innovation, because when people can actually use it, because when it actually improves people's lives as well, that's when you see the greatest adoption. That's when you see the greatest product market fit, and that's when you know like don't even like have to market. We got to $100 million in essentially like volume, and I've never paid for KLs. I've never paid for KLs. I've never paid for marketing. I have an amazing publicist, right? Does everything, and we do everything like organically, yes, right? So like everything just happens seamless. Right. Yes. Like everything just like happens seamlessly. Like when things are right, and everything just flows from from there, essentially. As long as you focus on creating something real, creating something of substance that actually creates and it actually contributes value.
Contributing about value, I have seen recently VC's model have changed dramatically especially the 6 months, and there is not enough liquidity there is liquidity, but not like used to be 2-3 years ago in Web3 VCs. And you work on the venture side with, is that Adaverse, right? Adaverse,
correct.
And now you're a founder again, you know, of Mansa. Do you think the current model of Web3 VC has been broken? Is broken?
Yeah, I feel like you can't just only depend on tokens, right? I think that's the thing. And I feel like it's a flawed business model where essentially you're investing assuming that there is enough exit liquidity, right? But you're not investing assuming that they're building something valuable that can either A get acquired, that can either B generate substantial revenue, or that C can like just go for a listing or something, right? So I think I believe there's a lot of incentive misalignment that happens, where essentially a lot of investors want you to launch tokens as soon as possible rather than actually building something that accrues value. And then if there is a token, if there needs to be a token, essentially that there will be enough like liquidity, like to go essentially back and forth. And I think also things like, like I'm not a trader. I literally only buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a few tokens, and I just hold. But I see why there's a market for like meme coins and like all these things. I feel like these are value destructive. So incredibly value destructive, and that sucks up the liquidity, because if I'm in retail and I bought the like Millennia tokens, right, and like I got screwed, I'm not buying meme coins again, right? And that stops me from buying the Mansa coin like when that comes, because like, oh man, like I got screwed like a few months ago, so I'm not doing that. So I feel like all these different things. So essentially, the reason why there's a lack of liquidity is because there has been a lot of garbage like that's also been sold to like a lot of retail recently. But to be completely honest, I think that great projects are still doing like really great.
Yes.
So like there is like still a market, right? So I think you should just invest in companies that survive through bear markets and thrive like during like bull markets.
Okay, I love that, surviving two bear markets. Now let's talk about the future of Mansa. What does the future of Mansa look like in LatAm, South Asia, Africa? Are the liquidity and payment dynamics different from Africa? So Latin and South Asia?
Yeah, no, I feel like the nuance. Okay, so the nuances are a little bit different, but the teams are the same. There's high usage of mobile phones. There's high usage of like mobile money. People don't really use cash because everything is like digital. For example, M-Pesa handles 90% of Kenya's like economy.
It's crazy.
Not money transfer economy. 90% of the economy goes through a fucking mobile app, which is insane to me, right? There's the same thing in Grab. WeChat handles trillions of dollars,
yes,
right? And you have Nubank, and then like you have all these different, right, like fintechs that do trillions of dollars in volumes. So, and you have the same pain points where essentially a lot of these countries depend on a lot of remittances coming in because you have a lot of people that went abroad and worked and are sending money back. So there are all these very similar teams, but essentially different nuances in essentially how each and every market operates. But things are very much more or less similar. And that's the beautiful thing about like emerging markets. And that's what has also helped us like scale very quickly and very considerably, is because we have an understanding of the market and we actually have boots on the ground. Okay,
now just digging more into this, how are you thinking about integrating with traditional finance rail? I think that's the most challenging part.
No.
Are you betting 100% on crypto native infrastructure or just hybrid?
No, like crypto native doesn't work. Like 100% crypto native. Because at the end of the day, I still need to use my pesos. I still need to use my like Nigerian naira or my Thai baht to actually buy something,
Yes.
Right? So like it has to be a hybrid rail where essentially I can go seamlessly from fiat to stablecoins and then from stablecoins to fiat, like when I want to pay for something. But what's happening is that, and you're seeing a lot of infrastructure that's coming where, merchants can start accepting stable coins, right? Like so on and so forth, right? So we're focusing on building a hybrid infrastructure where it's absolutely seamless, where businesses and fintechs and so on and so forth won't even realize that they're using stable coins.
Okay. And now this is very important. How do you measure success at Mansa? Is it volume, users, social impact, or something more personal?
That's a very interesting question. Okay, obviously, the metrics like volume are very important, right? Volume is very important. The number of companies like we work with is important. Who we work with like is important as well. But I think what's even more important is how much impact do we have in the seamless movement of funds into like emerging markets? Because
Okay.
I personally believe myself, right, that there's no, and you can spend hundreds of billions of dollars, but there's no way emerging markets are going to develop if you cannot enable the seamless flow of money in and out. Because if there's no seamless flow of money in and out, there's no seamless flow of people. And when there's no seamless flow of people, there's no exchange of ideas. And when there's no exchange of like ideas, there's no growth in economic like activity, right?
Okay.
So I think like that's the first fundamental layer like that we have to focus on, and like reduce like the cost of sending like money like back and forth. So success to me would be contributing and adding a considerable like amount of value that lowers the cost for a lot of the payment companies that we work with, that makes it easy for a merchant that has Naira and wants to pay RMB in China, or somebody in China like they wants to pay something like in Brazil. So when we can enable that seamless flow at a fraction of the cost of Web 2, that would be success to me.
That's insane. Now I have an extra question, like a bonus question. Because we're going to be on Binance Live.
Right.
So recently, I don't know, do you know Bilal Sandik, from Pakistan? Have you heard about Bilal?
No, I have. It's not the, yes, I think, I'm not too sure.
For the Crypto Council.
Yeah,
Like,
Crypto Council, yes,
because
correct.
I want to hear your opinion.
Correct.
So Bilal's a good friend of mine. We met about 3 years ago. And then for people that don't know, Bilal created the Crypto Council in Pakistan.
Oh, wow.
Pakistan obviously is an emerging market as well. It's
Wow.
not obviously not Europe, it's not US. And then he invited Sisi to be part of the Crypto Council. And they speed this really fast. And then they invite the World Liberty Forum, from the US to come to be part of the Crypto Council. So the news say in 37 days, they put a framework for adoption of crypto in a country what never done before.
Wow.
So it's not a question, it's just I would like to know your opinion. How much we need, like, because this is they're working directly with the Minister of Finance, Minister of IT, banks, staff. How important is for people in emerging markets to be part of this like political agenda if you want to scale up?
We have to.
All of this.
That's the
You
only
have
way.
to, yeah?
We have to. It's the only way. We have to be. And like if you think about it, that a lot of people think when you see that Trump won, a lot of it was there was a lot of crypto money behind Trump. Coinbase spent tens of billions of dollars, right? Like on like elections, like over the past few years, right? Getting crypto friendly like congressmen, right? They convinced Trump. Trump went to Bitcoin Nashville, right? And if you look at like Trump's numbers, right, and like his polls numbers, his poll and his campaign really changed after Nashville, and it went all to the right because now you had all these Bitcoin, all these like crypto people, right, like supporting and like voting for them as well. So it shows, and when you compare, the regulatory clarity that we have right now in the US to maybe like 3 years ago when they were trying to kill crypto, when Biden and his like administration were trying to kill us literally, right? It shows you how political influence can like really change things. And I think that's an amazing case study into what can be done in emerging markets as well, right? I think that we should stop trying to fight regulators.
Okay.
Like there's no point, or like hide from regulators, right? No, I think we should engage with the regulators and work with them together to come up with the necessary framework and policies that create a culture of innovation and that allows innovation to thrive.
So there's a new term that in town is called crypto diplomacy.
Yeah.
So in one point, all of us that were in crypto, especially people that have been building for a long time, in one point we will have to be diplomats.
Correct.
Would you in one point think you will be a political person of one country just to help the crypto world to move faster?
I mean, like I'm open to helping each and every person in like emerging markets, right? And like I believe that like as long as we are building solutions and changing like people's life, I will always stand behind that.
Okay, Mo, thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
so
to the show. This has been amazing, probably one of the best.
Thank you so much.
And I hope the best to Mansa and the whole team.
Thank you.
And this year it will be the best year of our lives.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you all the crypto G's. Bye bye.
Thank you guys. All right.